What is up, Eastgate fam? A bit of a bummer story here. I recorded my audio separately for this video and it didn't quite work out, so we'll do this voiceover style instead. So welcome to, once again, a pretty raw, no frills, first impression, first ride video of the Meepo NLS Belt. Stay tuned to thestateofeastgate.com and at thestateofeastgate on Instagram for my full written review coming out soon. The first thing I can tell you about this board is that it gives me chills in how much it's like a boosted. The deck is by far the closest you'll come to a boosted V2 loaded Vanguard in terms of shape, flex and rebound. This is the same deck used on the NLS and NLS Pro, so if you have one of those, you'll know what I'm talking about. If anything, the NLS deck used on the NLS Belt is, if anything, just ever so slightly stiffer than the boosted V2 loaded Vanguard type deck. Ever so slightly. If you'd only notice if you'd written both, that's for sure. But it is nowhere near as stiff and has as an aggressive rebound as, say, your boosted V3s, like your Stealth and your Plus. The 85mm wheels, which were also of boosted fame previously, 78A and squishy enough to absorb everything that I took on with this trail. So medium rough road surfaces with debris, leaves, bark, sticks and twigs and obstacles like that, even stones. 85mm will take care of these sorts of things. It's only when your roads are really bad that you should maybe consider going up, to anything 90 and above. And of course, cloud wheels being extremely popular at the moment. But if your roads and paths are semi-decent, the 85s eat them up just fine. The bushings on this board are double barrel. I thought what I have in this board was 90A, double barrels front and back. However, the bushings I have in the board are orange, and orange in Meepo language is 100A, although it doesn't have 100A printed on these bushings. But the orange colour leads me to believe they might be 100A. They don't feel 100A, however, they feel 90A, and I believe they're supposed to be 90A. They carve nicely enough for me at 90A, and I don't know why I would get two sets of 100A bushings, one set on the board and one set in the accessories kit. It seems like these are 90A, they just might be an older set of 90As. It's hard to know for sure. I'll just have to ask Meepo and write that up correctly in the full written review. But all in all, I don't actually feel a need to change these bushings, whatever they are. They seem to be quite in the Goldilocks zone for me and my riding style. If anything else, I might trade the cupped washers on roadside for flat washers, or do the old Daniel Kwan trick and just flip the cup washers over so that they're pretty much flat. So for those of you playing at home, in terms of what the washer configuration is on these bushings, they have no board side washers and cupped roadside washers. This board comes standard with a 10S 2P pack of Samsung 40Ts. So these are the 21700 cells, and that's where the differences really start to begin between this board and a boosted. A boosted was a 13S, this board is a 10S. However, the Meepo cell size is considerably larger, boosted using 18650 cells, this board using 21700 size cells. This board will get a similar top speed to a boosted board, boosted V2, boosted V3, which is your 22 miles an hour, 36 kilometer an hour top speed sort of level, which is pretty tame by today's standards and even pretty tame for belt drives at this price point. So this board isn't necessarily all about speed, and I would say the range is comparable to that of an X-Way Flex. However, I haven't done a full range run on this board yet. I just have a sneaking suspicion it will be basically the same based on my previous experience with this type of Meepo pack. Something else incredibly similar to boosted boards is of course the new Meepo remote, the Meepo M4. It is virtually identical in shape, to the boosted remote. However, it lacks a dead man switch. If that's your thing, this remote does not have one, whereas the boosteds did. However, where the Meepo remote compares favourably to boosted is the Meepo remote has a whopping great big display on it with all of the useful telemetry you want in a display on a remote, including speed, trip distance, odometer. You have your speed mode and you have your brake mode. So brake modes is something that I haven't experienced for a while because I haven't had a Lingyi ESC'd board, or I haven't tested a Lingyi ESC'd board for a while. But since I think it was around the time of the original NLS and the very first V3s that we started to see brake mode adjustments included on these boards. So you have 4 speed modes forward and 4 brake modes to slow you down, adjustable through the remote. On this ride, I think I had it on speed mode 3 and brake mode 2, and it felt okay. I mean, here's the thing I've noticed with how much the Lingyis have improved. They've gone from having an extremely unpredictable response, I suppose. That's my experience with older Lingyi ESCs, is that you would apply, let's say, 10% on the throttle, and sometimes you would get 10% response, but, you know, after a couple of seconds, there'd be a lag or there'd be a latency. Other times, you'd experience the latency, but instead of getting the 10% that you expect, you'd only get 5, or you'd get 20. So there'd always be a period of latency, but no matter what you put into the remote, you know, let's again say 10% pressure, who knows what you were going to get. I feel like maybe 50% of the time you put on 10% pressure, you'd get 10% response. Other times you get 5, other times you get 20, other times you get 25. It was extremely unpredictable in terms of what you would give it. Even if what you were putting in to the remote was consistent, you would always get back an inconsistent response. And that was the same for when you took your pressure off of the throttle. Were you going to keep going? Was there still going to be power transferred to the motors even though you're not putting any input into the remote? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Very strange behavior on those ESCs, and the braking response was even worse. What I've noticed so far with this ESC from Lingyi, which Meepo just called the Meepo 6.5, this is their 6.5 variation, I guess you'd call it, is the response is fantastic. There is no latency, you know, almost to a fault is that it's not kind, you know. You will get, you know, 100% of what you put in, you will get back. And you'd get it immediately. So that's actually a really good thing in terms of how they've been able to turn the performance around on those ESCs. But in the same way, it being consistent and accurate, it also makes it quite different to a hobby wing. A hobby wing has a progressive curve, and it's kinder and it's more forgiving. A Lingyi is 100%, almost 100% immediate, and it gives back to you 100% what you tell it to. So for a lot of people, this is right up their alley. For me, I'm undecided. I think it's fantastic that you do now know what you get with a Lingyi ESC. You know, I now know what they're about in 2020, which is very different to what they were about in 2018, 2017. They're a highly responsive, highly accurate ESC, but they're not very kind, they're not very forgiving, they don't give you a lot of margin for error. So there is still quite a bit of difference, I think, between the two, but I don't think it's no longer a case of saying one is better than the other. They're now just different. For me to try and get a true hobby wing feel out of this Lingyi ESC, I think I'd be happy to bump it up to speed mode 4 on my next ride, but I might actually dial the brake mode down to brake mode 1. See, for me, I'm not entirely like everyone else. A lot of people like really responsive brakes. For me, I like a gentler brake. For me, my philosophy is with electric skateboards is that you don't want to jam on the brakes and come off of the board abruptly. I believe brakes are to slow you down so that you can run off a board or dive and roll off of a board. That's my personal philosophy. because even in an emergency situation, if you have to jam on the brakes unexpectedly, your body is not braced or prepared for that immediate inertia, so to speak. You will still come off worse for wear. If you're able to slow down and then control or prepare yourself for what's about to happen next as you're slowing down, I think that's a far more favourable outcome. But that's just me. So I do prefer a softer, gentler, more forgiving brake. I prefer to slow down, and then I'll take care of the rest myself. This belt drive even sounds like a boosted. It sounds exactly like my boosted Stealth. So it brought back a lot of memories. It does give you that high-pitched squeal in the early part of the throttle, but once you throttle up and you start maintaining a consistent speed, that goes to more of a hum, sort of a high medium pitch hum, but it's consistent and it's quieter once you get up to speed. It's definitely without question the most comfortable Meepo board I've ever ridden. It is missing the neoprene shock absorbing grip tape which featured on the NLS Pro. I don't know why they didn't transfer that over to this board. It seemed like an obvious thing to do. I suppose whether you have the shock absorbing grip tape or not is almost a little bit irrelevant when you start talking about a belt drive and you start talking about full urethane rear wheels, because that's really where your comfort is coming from, and that beautiful stability and cushiness that comes from having full urethane wheels on all four corners of the board is definitely a completely different feeling and makes you feel at one with the road, let's say. So far with the board there have been no faults or troubles. Taking it out of the box, I just made sure to tighten everything on the board and make sure it was roadworthy and ready to roll, and it has been. Put it on the ground the first time and give it a kick to start, and away you go. So no need to press any buttons on the board ever. Even when you turn the board off, you don't actually have to turn the board off. You can just turn the remote off and the board will switch itself off as well. In the past with this ESC, I remember you could turn the remote off, but the board would remain on in sort of a standby mode for a while and then eventually turn itself off. Now it's instant. So you can drop the board on the ground, turn the remote on, kick push and you're off. You're turning the board on, and as soon as you finish riding, all you have to do is turn the remote off and the board will also turn itself off instantly. So that's a pretty cool improvement also. These wheels have the Kegel or Kegel cores, which means you can swap them out for any orangutan wheel, such as Kegels or Koguamas, Boa wheels, those 115mm rubber wheels and wheels like them with those sorts of cores. No word on other types of pulleys yet from Meepo. However, I'm sure they'll come. So if you are after wheels that suit an ABEC style or ABEC clone style type of core, such as cloud wheels, I'm pretty sure we could make that happen from Meepo with enough people demanding it. And yeah, I think that's about it for this one, guys. So far so good with the Meepo NLS Belt, Meepo's most comfortable board yet, and dare I say it, a potential successor to the boosted board. However, there are many people who are going to be going after that crown. Meepo is only one of them. However, Meepo is also the only one so far, anyway, using boosted's motors. They have a remote, which is the most similar to boosted's. They are using boosted's wheels. They are using a deck that is probably the most similar feeling to a boosted loaded Vanguard style deck that I've ever ridden. So I say boosted successor with some caution because everybody wants to be the boosted killer. But in all honesty, riding the Meepo NLS Belt, I can say that at least so far they have come the closest, or they are the closest. So please stay tuned again to thestateofeskate.com and at thestateofeskate on Instagram, and I'll hopefully have a full written review for this board up in the next few weeks. Until then, enjoy the rest of the footage, and I'll see you soon.